Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Joes of all ages, welcome to the main event of the evening. It's Talking Joe with Chief and Steve.
Yo! Yo, Joe! Yo!
Hey, it's me, the Chiefy Two Shoes, joined by you.
It's S-Jubbs in the hizzy.
You know, baby, how are you, my friend?
I'm okay. Staying positive, staying healthy. I've taken to indoor workouts, Chief.
That's the ticket.
You got it, man. I mean, we can't leave the house. I look over at my calendar and it's been 8 days of self-quarantine so far. That's 8 days of not being able to touch my wife, so I gotta let off steam somehow.
That's it. I tell you what I did. I started doing, a while back, the old insanity workout from Shaun T. Have you heard of that?
Oh, man, yes, I have heard of it. I've done like one or two, wanted to throw up.
Yeah, it's a killer, man. It's a killer. You have as you're on your knees. But I'm in the garden doing that at the available opportunities. So, and I've also been doing some obstacle courses with the young kid in the house, the 4-year-old. She's been doing some obstacle courses. I will try and post these up online. We've done 7 so far, and around the garden on the climbing frame. They're pretty good. So
looks pretty heavy on the cardio, man. Hats off to you, dude. You are just a tower of energy.
Listen, man, I'm cutting straight to the chase here. Now, you messaged me about 10 hours ago saying that you had coming on to the TV in the Australia. You said something along the lines of your favourite Bond is on the TV, and I was like, right, it's Roger Moore. It can only be one of 2 movies. It's got to be either Live and Let Die or Spy Who Loved Me. And he was like, the Spy Who Loved Me is coming on TV. I'm going to watch it. So I was like, oh, okay, I've got a mission ahead of me. I've got to watch this movie before the podcast so we can talk about it. So that's what's happening. So I'm going to jump ship now, and I'm going to go straight to Snack Police.
What?
Because I want snacks ready for when I'm talking about this movie.
Let's get into it.
Potato chips, crisps, biscuits and candy, washing them down with a whiskey or a brandy, chewy sweets, cookies, built around jerky, snacks running fair because we got them at our mercy. We're snackers, attackers, bad mother truckers, and we're eating all the crackers, munchers, crunchers, knock out snacks like we're heavyweight punchers. The snack police are in the hizzy.
Oh, brother, it's the third and final treat from the Philippines. This one's called Eggnog Cookies by the Japanese brand Nissin.
Okay.
Apparently made with real fresh eggs, which is dodgy as hell since it's coming in a bag. But here we go. I'm going to rip into them. They're little pint-sized biscuits. I don't suppose you guys have mini cheddars, but they're about the same. Same diameter.
Yeah, mini cheddars. I tell you what, I've got a packet right in front of me.
Ooh, you can just go through those.
Not for my particular snack, but just I've got them.
Of course, always to hand. Like anytime you reach for a snack, a mini cheddar should be to hand. Anyways, I'm gonna pop this bad boy in my mouth and see if I can taste eggnog.
Now then, listen, tell me.
Tastes like a biscuit to me.
I don't think I've ever had eggnog. What is it?
It's a milky, eggy drink that you typically have around Christmas time. It should be alcoholic, I think. I don't know what it's spiked with. I'm not a big eggnog drinker myself. But these just taste like regular biscuits, man.
Okay, this is my missus. I think she has these. It's like Advocar, isn't it? Advocar and lemonade, I think.
Eggnog?
Is that right? Yeah.
You crack an egg
that's a snowball. No, that's a snowball. Yeah. Anyway, I've just sent you a picture of me with a packet of mini cheddars in case you thought I was lying.
Me calling the chief out for being a liar? Never.
The reason I've got those mini cheddars in front of me, and the reason I've got this other thing, is the father-in-law, he works in a bingo hall, and they were going to have a big Caribbean night, and not the mini cheddars are Caribbean, but they had a big Caribbean night planned in the bingo hall, but of course, big shutdown in the UK of all leisure activities, and he had loads spare, so basically it was snacks were going 100 packets of mini cheddars and crisps, and because it was Caribbean night, he's got these, which is my snack. This is tropical ripe plantain chips.
Oh man!
So let's get
points to Chief for going exotic.
Yeah, you know it, baby. These are net weight 85 grams, 3 ounces. So these are, I don't know what, I think, have I ever had plantain? Not sure, I'm about to.
What flavour are they?
Naturally sweet.
Ooh.
Man, they are crunchy. They have been fried in a lot of oil.
So it's more like a banana chip.
Yeah.
And there's no like spice on it or anything like barbecue salt.
He did give me, in that box he sent me, he did give me these ones which were plantain chips lightly salted, which I had yesterday. Holy moly, they were salted, man. You had to drink about 5 gallons of water afterwards. They were good. These are good. I'm putting them down because they're too crunchy.
Yay,
listen,
snack for the win.
Listen, I want to talk about Spy Who Loved Me. If you don't like Spy Who Loved Me, A, there's something wrong with you, and B, fast forward about 20 minutes because I'm talking at length about this puppy.
Gee whiz. Are we an episode of Talking Joe or are we an episode of The Out of Timers? It's movie talk, baby.
Cheap plug. Listen, I don't think it's any secret on this podcast that my favourite Bond is Roger Moore. And Spy Who Loved Me, for me, this is part of my youth. I watched this as much growing up as I did Star Wars, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Back to the Future. Oh, quick sidebar. You messaged me the other day saying that you watched Back to the Future with your missus for the first time. Not that you watched it for the first time, but she watched it for the first time.
She did, and can I just say that the appeal of Back to the Future is bulletproof.
Brilliant.
She's a pretty light entertainment kind of gal. She likes game shows and Pixar movies, but when it comes to Back to the Future, buddy, that just hits and never hurts, man.
And she liked it, yeah?
Thing. Yeah, loved it. If she had a bit more free time, we would have climbed straight into the sequel. But that is waiting for us in the future. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, listen, man, you had Spy Love Me to watch anyway.
Yeah, while she was off doing a night shift, poor devil.
Yeah.
Essential services. Listen,
we are going to talk G.I. Joe. It's not going to be 20 minutes talking about this. It's probably going to be 45 minutes talking about Spy Love Me. No, I'm kidding. We're going to keep it about 10 minutes. But listen, I'm going to go through a few of my favourite bits of this movie. Now, initially, Bond is in a after the intro with the subs, he's in a ski chalet, schmoozing it up with the ladies. I'm not about the womanising at all, but Roger Moore has about a minimum of 5 ladies per movie. I think that's the average. And he's with his first one here in the ski chalet, and he gets a secret message on his watch, and his watch prints out some crazy kind of thing telling him he's got to go on a mission. Now, where was all that stored in the watch?
Oh man, beautiful, isn't it? Isn't it just? It's those those things that you just have a roll of, and you kind of indent the type into the roll of plastic.
You select the letter and you press the trigger button. Yeah.
Of course, the thing's just clacking out of a Seiko watch. You notice that, Roger's using Seiko, whereas, Daniel Craig is using Omega. I mean, how times have changed.
Yeah. And then he gets dressed, and this man does not wear underwear, because he's clearly naked in the bed with the woman. Next thing you see, he's pulling on some yellow overalls. He has not bothered to put pants on. He's just going straight on with them overalls. And this is another thing where it's set up so well, where he goes out into the mountains to do skiing, and he is in bright yellow, with a red rucksack, and the goons perfectly in black. So we know who the villains are and who the hero is. He is standing out, they're in black, and it's a theme kind of throughout this movie where all the villains either wear stark black or bright red at the end on the submarine. But yeah.
Oh, Chief, but what a line, scene. What a line. But James, I need you. So does England.
And that is where it starts. I mean, there's a stark contrast here between. There's a lot of comedy going on, especially in the first half, and when you get to those scenes at the back end, the last 25 minutes of the movie, where the prisoners break out of the sub and the tanker, and it's hardcore violence, and there's not really any comedy to be had. It's really vicious stuff going on and war movie kind of elements. But in the beginning bit, it's just all about the one-liners, and just it has me cracking up every time.
Oh, buddy, this was like Roger's You Only Live Twice, wouldn't you say? I mean, just the scale of it, the kind of the superpowers posed on the brink of nuclear war, people getting their missiles stolen, 2 agents from across the pond having to work together, that sort of thing. And the scale of it is so epic. Nice miniature work as well. You should.
Fantastic constructions going on. And you mentioned the superpowers and the agents from two different things. So you've got the Russian agent, Barbara Bach, and you've got obviously Roger as Bond. And when they come...
The future Mrs. Ringo Starr, if you please.
Was she really? Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
she got married to Ringo in like 80 or 81. So
Okay,
shortly
did not
after
know that.
shooting this, of course, a Beatle has to add a Bond girl to his collection.
Yeah. This was
That's how these things work.
1977. This was
Sure,
1977, so same time as Star Wars Episode 4, which is interesting because at the end, she's kind of tied up on Stromberg's couch in a very Princess Leia Return of the Jedi on Jabba's sail barge outfit. And, maybe I don't want to say that Lucas stole from this, but, it's the comparisons are there definitely. But anyway, these two characters, that twist early on where Bond kills this Russian agent on the mountain, and then you find out that this is Barbara Bach's lover. And quite about the midpoint, she questions him about it, and he fesses up that yes, he killed him, and she says to him, fine, we can work together, but when this mission's over, I am going to kill you. And that's kind of hanging over for the rest of the movie until obviously Bond schmoozes her at the end.
I'm not sure that was adequately resolved, but, you level a pistol at Bond, he'll level a firearm of his own on you.
First a popping cork, then popping something else. But listen,
Lordy.
we talked in very brief tones before we started recording that I had given it 5 stars on Letterboxd, you'd given it 4, and you weren't keen on that Egyptian stuff that was going on.
Yeah, apart from setting up Jaws, which could be done in any number of different settings and more briefly, I don't know if it added much. Just a sort of a back and forth between the two different sources of the microfilm. Yeah, man, not so sold on that. And a lot of it was quite drawn out. I mean, exactly how many times can you watch Jaws in painful slow motion, basically like menace over his victim? They never show the death very viscerally, and you never see any blood down the front of Jaws' shirt. But, the implication is he bit the guy's neck off.
Yeah, I've put there Jaws slow-mo to music. So yeah, you've got that kind of overtone of there's like a show going on or something at not the pyramids or wherever they are, and yeah, he's biting into the guy's neck. But then that scene where they do go to the pyramids and the two heroes have kind of stolen away in the back of the van. Jaws has got the microfilm. He knows what they're in the back of the van. They don't know that he knows. And that whole scene where they have the fight in the pyramids is brilliant, and then they try and get away in the van, and here are the one-liners that Rogers delivers. So so Jaws is trying to get them. They're in the van. She's fumbling with the keys, and he's like, try the big one. Then he's like, can you play any other tune? When she's crunching through the gearbox. Then he says, let's try reverse. That's backwards. Then he hits you with
Roger.
Then he hits you,
So
then he hits you
helpful.
with women drivers. And then, would you like me to drive? So, and he's hitting all these one-liners with a deadpan face as Jaws is assaulting the vehicle. He is cool as a cucumber, and obviously they get away in the end, and they get some shared bodily warmth. But, yeah. Just,
Buddy, it was another time. Look, Barbara was very easy on the eye, but, like, as far as being an on-screen match to Roger...
Yeah,
man, we're very much in the era of, like, the females not really being able to bring much to the party.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they don't seem to be an equal match, even if they are like positioned to be. I mean, she's made to be a badass, like Russian Soviet major, and yet she never ties her hair up. So, a little bit of a contradiction there.
Yeah. I thought she was laying a bit of smack down, though. She's chopping a few people and stuff.
Oh, how great was it when, like, they both turn around in the middle of these sort of Egyptian ruins.
Yes.
And, like, Bond's leveling his Walther, and she's, like, got this, like kung fu pose.
She's got a high chop hand ready to come down on him.
Dude.
Because that's kind of Roger's signature. He loves the chop to the neck. So that was
the
kind
chop
of fitting.
and the nice sort of low camera angle on his high kick to kind of make it sweep over the camera. Bah!
Yeah.
Pointed toes and everything. My dance teacher mother would be proud.
He loves double hand kind of grabbing something and swinging for a double kick. So, Man. And what's your thoughts on the Lotus and the that kind of scene where they individually throw different, first of all, bad guys at him. First of all, it's the motorbike and sidecar with the kind of rocket thing and all those feathers, and he still can't fly. And then they throw the the car at him with Jaws and the gun. Then they throw the helicopter at him. Then he goes underwater, and they throw the kind of scuba divers and the kind of underwater submersible thing. They're just throwing everything they can at Bond, all kind of tailored in this black with a yellow trim. It's all very fitting. I love it.
So I shrieked with joy at 2 specific moments.
Yep.
The first is after the ski chase and that insane one-take stunt of whoever the ski double was going over the cliff.
To silence.
To silence, yes.
Yeah.
Like, shaking his skis loose. I mean, that's some doing, because, like, skis, you're clipped in, man. You have to be clipped in, otherwise you'd never make the jump. Shaking the skis loose, falling for what feels like an eternity before deploying that good old Union Jack.
And then the music hits. Oh my God, there's goosebumps.
Nobody does it better. Makes me feel sad for the rest. Nobody does it half as good as you. Baby, you're the best.
Yeah, man, Carly Sam, that was a great track as well. Spy Who Loved Me, I mean, it's got to be up there as one of my all-time favorite love songs, as well as theme tunes. Oh,
When
and of
they
course
are-
the second goosebump
go on.
moment. Sorry, man, it's got to be the Lotus Esprit going off that jetty and then deploying the submersible.
Can you
the fins
swim?
and stuff. Oh, buddy. I have a love affair for underwater action, and it's this film that planted that seed deep in my subconscious.
And that underwater action, man, it's so good because it's so slow. All the stuff, obviously, moving underwater is slow, but the tension, he rams one of those scuba guys with the Lotus, and you hear the clunk and there's blood and the guy's falling down under the water, and then that submersible, she hits the actual button to put the smoke out, under the water, and then hits almost like a mini kind of contact depth charge kind of thing, and blows that up, and then obviously drives out onto the beach.
How did you know about that?
just-
Bond, I stole the plans to this car 2 years ago.
She's putting him in his place there. It's brilliant. And she actually drugs him as well at a couple of points, doesn't she? Brilliant.
Yeah, she does get the upper hand, but man, I just speak of like screen presence. Right,
okay,
Roger's got it. He just oozes it. You just want the camera to linger on him. Whereas Barbara, she's got some killer lines, but the deliveries are a little bit... Well, look, I mean, she's very much younger than Roger. Obviously, didn't have much of a film career beyond this, I don't think. So
And I think
it's a
he
case
was-
of
I
like
think-
hiring the prettiest girl in the room, but not necessarily the most vivacious.
No, I think Roger as well was older than Sean when he took over as Bond.
True.
What was he? He was fresh off The Saint, I guess, which was a good TV
Simon
show.
Templar.
That's it. But at the end, when they are kind of, escaping, it felt that Stromberg's vessel, it felt like to me something out of Flash Gordon. All these guys dressed all in red, kind of uniformed, and all these weird control panels. I don't know, it just had a bit of a Flash Gordon-y vibe to it, to me.
I love the fact that like they sort of take over the control room and have rerouted the nuclear missiles launched from the submarines to sort of intercept the other submarine.
Yeah.
And so it's all being displayed on the globe. That's such a Bond trope that like that's how you know that you've won, because it's displayed on a giant infographic.
and let's not forget that Bond, of course, is an expert at disarming a nuclear warhead, which he does, and then creating a bomb. And then he's also an expert when they get into that control room. He sees a manual, he picks it up, and he just starts reading the manual. He's like, okay, yeah, fine, I know how to, reprogram these nuclear submarines. So
there are a few weird breaks in pace. Like, if you flash forward to a Bond film of the 90s, I mean, that whole sequence would have been set to music, and there wouldn't have been an opportunity to catch your breath. But hey, it was a different time, man. Things were stylish, things were languid. And very Flash Gordon. A lot of the miniature work felt like science fiction. Putting helicopters underneath these glass bubbles and stuff like that.
Yeah. But and then obviously he they want to bomb Stromberg's base. And Stromberg, let's just touch on him for a second. His goal, where at one point Bond says, okay, fine, how much do you want? And he's like, it's not about money. I'm here for world destruction and, create a world under the sea. This guy is proper screw loose. And it's nice to have
like
someone
a well-financed Wingfield.
Yeah, he didn't want... Yeah, exactly. Good touch. Deep cut. There was no ulterior motive. He was like, whatever you say or do, I am bombing the shit out of this world. And, okay, fine, he might be a bit of a loose cannon, but he was serious. He had the tools he's stolen the tools to do it. And then at the end, the sub-commander says, we're going to blow the shit out of Stromberg's base. Bond says, look, give me an hour. I've got to rescue my lady friend. And so the guy goes, all right, fine, I've seen her. Yes, fine, you can have an hour. Go and get on this. Have you got my special delivery? And they build him a jet ski, which obviously in 1977 was revolutionary tech. And they built
it's more than a jet ski. It's like a wet bike. You see how it's like sort of raised up out of the water on these twin skids. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Zartan's swamp skier.
Yes.
In a sense, because you're kind of riding on skis that are, kind of hydroplanes up out of the water. So Bond is like sitting very, very pretty. But let me tell you, I bet that thing does not corner for shit. So he's riding it in a straight line, as gingerly as you please.
That was good. Those scenes were quality with him on the bike. And, he obviously gets into Stromberg's base. And when he dispatches Stromberg, he confronts him at this massive table. I mean, who the hell is dining with Stromberg? Because this table's about 50 feet long. And Stromberg, he's no fool. He's got a gun, obviously, placed under the table with some super barrel. But Bond has, put his gun up to the barrel, and he knows what Stromberg's up to. And then he proceeds to walk around the table, dispatching Stromberg with about 5 or 6 shots at his leisure. It's a proper execution job.
Yeah, man. Well, License to Kill, baby. Bond is ruthless. I mean,
That's it.
The guy was orchestrating nuclear Armageddon. I think Bond's going to enjoy that one a little bit more than usual.
He got his just desserts there, I think.
Oof,
but
big time.
And then he escapes a bit of a confrontation with Jaws. Jaws obviously dispatches the shark, and we'll see him again in Moonraker. And Bond escapes with Barbara. And then he says, don't worry, no one will find us. Of course, there's a British vessel that's in the vicinity, and they've picked up Bond on the bleeper, on the scanner. And, Bond, what do you think you're up to? Keeping the British end up. And down comes the curtain. Yeah.
So would you say it's the perfect Bond experience?
Well, for me, I am not going to argue with anyone who says Live and Let Die. But for me, this is my personal favourite. And I think I will now watch Live and Let Die next week, but I flip-flop between the two. But having watched this again with more attention and trying to make notes because I wanted to talk about specific things on this pod, it has, in my mind, it is my favourite one. But other than that, if you're saying a different Bond is better than Roger, I am going to say you're wrong. But
all right, well then let me phrase it like this. If you were to pick a runner-up, who would it be?
A runner-up as Bond?
Yes.
I like Pierce Brosnan because I feel he's closest to Roger. But I don't dislike Sean Connery at all. It's a different type of movie. I think this is... The Roger, for me, has those comedy elements and the schmoozing and the chops. And this is one of the only ones where he really uses a gun. He uses a machine gun in this, which I don't think he does in any other Roger movies. He's a lover, not a fighter, to quote Michael Jackson. But I don't know. What about yourself? Where do you lean?
You know what? The first motion picture that I ever caught in cinemas was License to Kill.
Right.
So hard to shake, your first Bond experience. I'm sorry Timothy Dalton wasn't around for more because his 2 films are pretty unique, and he added some serious overtones to the character, which perhaps had been lacking with old Roger, who was definitely ladies' man, having fun with the role, but never really felt particularly three-dimensional. I'm stepping on hallowed ground here, but
No, that's fair.
he was a pastiche of the gentleman spy, whereas Dalton seemed like a flawed real human being. He sweated a lot more on screen, like
He was like a forerunner for Daniel Craig almost, wasn't he, in terms of the way he played it?
Agreed, yeah. So something about those films just set them apart, and I guess it is largely to do with the fact that they are Timothy's. But that was my era, I guess. And then, of course, I caught absolutely every one of Pierce Brosnan's in cinema, which, yeah, man, it definitely overstayed its welcome a little bit towards the end as plots got more incredulous.
Yeah. Well, there you go. This is the new Roger Moore...
Talking Bond.
Talking Bond, yeah. Listen, we are going to talk about some comics, but was there anything else we needed to catch up on before we do that?
I think we're all sewn up, Chief. Let's talk about some comics.
Good. It's Comic Talk, baby. Chief and Steve discussing like crazy. Larry Hama riding these bad boys, making sense of the wackiest toys. Listen as we talk about story arcs, making noise louder than Junkyard Box, talking about character motivations and all the various G.I. Joe fun locations. Okay, we are covering issues 173 and 174 for this particular episode, and what we do need to do is do a recap. So, last time on A Real American Hero, Flint, Lady J and Roadblock use information uncovered by Sneak Peek to infiltrate Darklon's secret bunker and take the villain prisoner. During their extraction, enemy fire manages to wound both Darklon and Lady J. With limited supplies at hand, Flint decides to save Lady J from her fatal wounds. But she stops him, insisting that the mission comes first, even above her love. As the helicopter crash lands on the USS Flag, Darklon is carried off, and whether Lady J will survive or not is still in doubt. Back in Brighton Beach, the Russian Arashikage dojo is attacked by a mysterious new enemy, the Blue Ninjas. They are pursuing the Russian master, but soon turn their attention to the three other ninjas, Storm Shadow, Snake Eyes and Billy. After a trying battle that leaves Billy fatally wounded, Storm Shadow asks the Russian master to tell him everything he knows about this deadly new adversary.
Bravo, Chief. Listeners, that was a one take.
And it was a
Chief
double
knows
paragraph. Yeah.
Buddy, you profesh, man. You missed your calling. Voice artist is in your stars, brother.
Okay, well, let's just quickly recap here. So, these both issues obviously written by Larry Hama. The first one artist is Ron Wagner, Will Rosado and S.L. Gallant. And issue 2 is just S.L. Gallant with inks by Brian Shearer on the first issue and Gary Erskine on the second. So looking at the covers, now the cover I actually have is which I know will be your favourite, cover A by, the photo is by John Haynes. It's the photo cover of the Ore Striker. And who we got there? We got Stalker, Scarlet, Roadblock and Duke.
My favourite, you say? Why would you say that?
Well, you're a toy man, aren't you?
I am, but boy, oh boy, oh boy, toy photography has come a long way, my friend, because this cover is amateur hour.
Basic.
It is pretty bad.
Yeah, I don't know who's posed these characters, but wow.
Oh, gee whiz. Anybody could have done a better job. I mean, yeah, like I say, toy photography has come a long way. This cover, in framing, in topography, the backdrop that they used, the figures that they used, the pose, the fact that the Ore Striker doesn't even have its top-mounted turret. Yeah, I mean, it's just, it's disappointing, man. They've mixed modern and vintage figures. Have you noticed they've got a vintage Stalker in the back there?
Oh, yeah, they have, yeah. And I'll tell you who will be upset with this, and that is Diagnostic 80, because A, look at the, like you said, setup of the figures, and B, I don't think any of these characters appear in the issue, do they?
Yeah, that's correct. Gee whiz.
Look at cover B, though, by Herb Trimpe. That is a cracker.
Yes. Well done, Mr. Trimpe.
So what we got here is a head-on shot of what is that tank? That's
the M1 Abrams.
That's it.
Main battle tank.
And we got Wildcard in there. I've got the real small little inset, so I can't really see too clearly. But is that Cross Country, Wildcard, and who's down low?
Steeler.
Of course it is. Yes, because it's an issue. Yeah, as always, 20 minutes ago I read the issue and I've forgotten it already. Listen, let's look at the cover for the next one. 174. My main cover I've got here is cover A by Gallant and Erskine, and it is Storm Shadow with a load of strewn bodies behind him, and he has been cut up. He is bleeding out.
Beautiful cover. Once again, not going to pass Chris's test, but I'm going to forgive it because, yeah, man, the only good Blue Ninja is a dead Blue Ninja, and it looks like Storm Shadow has been dealing death.
Yes, it. And cover B, Herb Trimpe, after pencils by Larry Harmer. And this is kind of a coffin being carried by the Crimson Guard with Mindbenders there in the background, Cobra Commanders at the front. Again, I've only got a small insert, so I can't see it that clearly, but it looks like it's a good one.
It is, but this is an unfortunate part of having just the inserts, and that's you don't get the benefit of comparing Larry's pencils to the end products.
Right,
and I
yes.
think there might have been a miscommunication. Because in Larry's pencils, if we zoom in on Cobra Commander's head,
Yeah.
it's downturned.
Yeah, I
which
see
conveys to me a sense of regret. All the Crimson Guard's heads are kind of downturned. Mindbender, we don't get as much detail on. He's kind of in the back. But Larry is very evident, even in the pencils, just the mock-up sketch, that everyone is in mourning.
Yeah.
Whereas when it came time for Trimpe to reinterpret this, I don't know if he fully understood who was in the coffin and what the importance of this funeral was. But
he's almost standing proud, Cobra Commander.
Yes, and his eyes are sort of askant to the right, which says to me he's kind of like watching his back.
Yeah.
It's like he's maybe in a more vulnerable position. He's perhaps expecting an assassination attempt or something. Like there's something else going on in Trimpe's reinterpretation, which, Harmer's is all about pure grief.
Yeah, good spot. That's why you're on the show, to call out these details. But we will post these images up on the socials. But yeah, that is.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see if the listeners have the same take.
Yeah,
on,
and that
on
subtle difference makes a world of difference to how the image is portrayed. I think a lot of poignant scenes in these issues.
Yeah,
Cobra Commander.
I was quite moved actually, and we'll get to that. But there's a scene with Cobra Commander. A couple of mute panels which are actually quite touching. It's rare to get that in G.I. Joe these days.
Yeah. So anyway, the beginning of these two issues it starts off in the relatively friendly Emirate of Benzheen, which is quite a nice touch, and we see a couple of tanks going at it, and we've obviously got the Joes that we mentioned, Wildcard, Cross Country, and Steeler, and Cover Girl. Is that Cover Girl? Yeah, Cover Girl.
Oh yeah.
And then we see the October Guard, and we've got there's some new members here, I think, as well.
Yeah, man, big special missions vibe.
Yeah,
it feels like we might even be in another point of history. Like, I know it's sunset, or maybe it's sunrise. Yeah, it's probably sunrise actually, but everything's kind of in a sepia tone, which feels to me like comic shorthand for like old-timey.
Yeah,
and new faces of the October Guard. Are they even called the October Guard at this point?
No,
it's
I
left
don't think
ambiguous.
They are. Because
it's
all we
left
know
ambiguous,
is,
and they're wearing red stars, which also kind of says to me this isn't contemporary times, because of course the Soviet Union no longer exists. The red star is kind of a national embarrassment. So why are they wearing vintage equipment? It's a lot of questions.
I mean, that could be, Ron Wagner coming on for these early pages, having not really drawn much G.I. Joe for a long time. So maybe the last time he drew, Dana, or if he ever did. I'm trying to remember if he did.
I think there's an alternative explanation, and that's literally they are trying to do a callback to an earlier time.
Yeah.
This is supposed to feel misleading. It's like, hey, what? Why is this Russian tank crew dressed up like they, from the Soviet Union? There is a level of timelessness to this opening tank battle, and it's definitely given to us by the way the Russians are portrayed. And they're very much the proud Soviet Union, old guard.
That's right. Yeah. I'm getting that vibe, and I'm also kind of unfortunately getting a haunting vibe of what's actually happening in reality right now, because all these streets are deserted in this normally heavily populated area. Citizens are kind of locked inside or fleeing the area. And this is unfortunately contemporary with what's going on in the world at the moment, with people staying inside. And that's just not, I don't want to say a happy coincidence, but just a coincidence. But yeah, I got that kind of chill of reading these first few pages of like, wow, this is relevant to today. Not that there's tanks down the street yet, there well could be, but let's hope not. But yeah, this is
well, there's a member of the Russian crew who's definitely guilty of some grocery hoarding. This new guy, what's his name?
He's got the can of food that he chucks to the dog.
Malyenki.
That's it. Yeah.
Malyenki, who's very much horror show light because he's always eating.
What Larry Hama does across this first issue is he leaves a lot of page cliffhangers. So that the first one is literally on kind of page 5, I think, where the Russian tank's gone around the corner. They see a shadow of what looks to be an enemy tank coming their way, and then Dana says, we're going to nail them. And you immediately cross-cut over to Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes, who have got Billy's dead, prone body, and they've interrupted Cobra Commander in his sleep, who's got a nice Cobra lamp by his bedside. And they kind of leave the body, and
I kind of want one of those now. Damn.
The Cobra lamp, yeah. Oof. And not dead Billy body, hopefully. They leave Cobra Commander with a...
You decide.
They leave Cobra Commander with a Blue Ninja head in his bed. It's kind of like Godfather-ish. And
and one of those filament weapons, those non-lightsabers.
I see it, the monofilament. And then this is the scene where we get a scene of no words. Cobra Commander comes out of his bed, pulls off the cover, a surprised look on his face, and then he's kind of hands on head, bending over, kind of weeping, and this is a bit of, cut to the heart moment in G.I. Joe where, look, even the bad guy can at some point in time get your sympathy.
I know I'm on record as saying that my favorite rendition of Cobra Commander is when we knew very little about him and he kind of took on that Bond villain-esque, very dangerous, very unknown quality. But then we would not be getting the benefit of this kind of three-dimensionality. So I think I'm going to rescind my previous opinion and say, like, in this instance, it's worth it. All the clownish backstory, make this guy a real human being. And so when he weeps for his son, who he at one point even wanted to put to death.
Yeah.
Like, the man is just a mess of contradictions, but there's a real person in there. And I felt genuinely moved by these silent panels.
Yeah, it's testament to Ron Wagner, that he's, got us feeling that for, a guy that should be... okay, no one ever hates Cobra Commander because of how he's been written and portrayed and the kind of goonish clownishness he has been at times. But, he is a bad guy at heart, but here we're seeing, okay, he's just a man underneath it all. We cut back to these scenes in Benzheen, and there's another cliffhanger moment where the two tanks kind of confront each other, and you see this scene of both of them have got each other in their sights. He says, on target, and you just see the sound effect of blam, blam, as both tanks fire at each other. Cliffhanger, as it cuts over to another poignant moment where Sneak Peek has gone to see his mother, and he's trying to explain, and he's saying, even now I can't tell you anything about where I was or what I was doing. I wish. And the final panel is, do I know you? And it's like, holy moly, this is another kind of gut-wrencher.
So, Chief, he was in deep cover for a little over a year, right? We take that to be the timeline.
Yeah.
So, was he kind of in limbo as deceased?
Yeah, I think so.
KIA.
I think his family was told he was KIA, yeah.
But then he's been missing, shall we say, for far more than a year. Because I'm just thinking how quickly Mrs. King, fell into Alzheimer's and
I
become
guess
decrepit.
Maybe he was, I don't know, missing in action for an extended period. Then they said, okay, fine, now he's KIA.
Right. Well, I just think she's really kind of had a very quick, steep decline because way back in ARAH, Dusty and Sneak Peek were talking about having Christmas at the King residence, and she was obviously looking her age, but she was pretty spry back then. So in what is assumed to be a very short span of comic time. She's kind of fallen off the wagon big time.
Well, maybe, I don't know. I'm fortunate enough that I've not been in a situation where I've, been told that a loved one has been unfortunately deceased after, serving, and maybe that does something mentally to someone and kind of increases their downward spiral. But yeah, I don't know.
Good call, man. Yeah, absolutely. So the guilt weighing on Sneak Peek's shoulders is double.
It's heavy, yeah. But nice to see Dusty there supporting him.
Yeah, buddies.
Because Dusty was a bit off with him, obviously, to start with.
To lighten the mood a little bit, do you feel like maybe Sneak Peek's portrayal in that uniform is a little bit, shall we say, portly?
He's a bit of a fat bastard, is what you're saying.
Buddy, it's very much in line with his action figure, which is noticeably a little bit more padded than the average G.I. Joe.
Okay,
yeah. So I don't know if that was deliberate on the artist's part, but I just thought it's kind of cute to note that even his time undercover, he was still keeping the pounds on.
Yeah. We cut. There's so much going on in these issues. We cut back and we get the revelation that the Joes and whoever the Russians are, whether they be October Guard or not, are actually not using live rounds. They're using kind of paintball because they're trying to sell their wares to the Emirate of Benzheen to show they've got the best equipment, the best hardware. Will he buy their stuff? And they'll end up teaming up because what happens is in Trucia Abysmia there is a kind of a revolution going on, and they're going to invade the forces of Benzheen. And, we kind of see that in full effect going across the next issue as well.
At this point, I'd like to raise the personnel used on the G.I. Joe tank team.
Yeah, please do.
We've got Steeler, the driver, Covergirl, the gunner, the loader is cross-country, and the tank commander is Wildcard.
You never want that man in charge of a tank, surely.
I just think it's a misappropriation or misallocation of specialties.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy who should be behind the wheel, the guy who's chiefly responsible for breaking stuff, is Wildcard.
Yeah.
Steeler, however, is firstly the most senior man on the team, and secondly the highest ranked. I think he's a second lieutenant.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Whereas Wildcard is the lowest ranking enlisted man on this particular crew. And I know pay grade does not mean much when it comes to G.I. Joe. It's normally the best man or woman for the job who calls the shots. But in this instance, like, everything is going for Steeler and pretty much nothing is going for Wildcard. It feels to me like he's had a bit of a personality transplant. Like, all of a sudden he's very responsible. He's talking to the Russian commander, even with his shirt ripped open. Like, Wildcard is so destructive, he doesn't even have any buttons on his shirt.
No. I mean, I am a Wildcard fan for the comedy value of him breaking stuff. But,
which doesn't happen in this issue because he's not the responsible leader.
Exactly. If you're going to put this guy in a comic, make sure that he goddamn breaks something or else. So, yeah, I don't see the reason why he was in here, personally. But anyway...
the other bone I have to pick, obviously being a toy guy, why am I seeing a story about an M1 Abrams tank when the G.I. Joe Mauler tank is just begging to be used?
Yes. And then I guess you would have had Heavy Metal instead of Steeler, would you?
I don't mind the personnel being the same, except with the Mauler, I think you're more likely to get away with a 3-man crew because the Mauler has an auto-loader. And I mean, cross country feels superfluous, so we could drop him and keep the same roster. And I don't think the story would be impacted in any way.
No,
but
shout.
Hey, man, what can you do? I guess they wanted to contrast the real world Russian tank with its Western equivalent.
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe Wildcard's the equivalent of that new guy who's kind of horror show light. I've forgotten his name already. But
Malyenki.
That's it, yeah.
Something like that. Just say it with a Russian accent. You can sell it anyway.
Malyenki bullshit, that's what that is. Rounding out this issue, we get back to the Arashikage dojo, and we actually find out that your man, I've forgotten his name already, the Russian...
Boris.
Boris,
Got
that's
all
it,
these
yeah.
Russians, yes.
And his
I will accept Russian master. There
Russian
you go,
master,
Chief.
his second in command is Moscovina, and she reveals herself to be pretty much a Terminator. What was that? What was that Mark Terminator 101? Was it? No,
The model, 101, I think. Geez, Cyberdyne Systems.
that's it. And she's pretty much one of them, I think.
Buddy, this was actually a shock reveal to me the first time I read it.
Yeah.
Turn the page and bam, she pulls her face off.
Yeah, she has got a more realistic mask than Snake Eyes.
Must do, man.
Jeepers. But
Very expressive.
So what is? It's just her brain, I guess, and her eyes inside that metal casing, I would imagine. And you find out, they tell you that she actually says the acolytes and lower levels, when talking about this Blue Ninja cult, the acolytes and lower levels are enhanced humans, the middle level are true cyborgs, and the upper echelons are no longer human at all. So literally, there is robots running the show for these Blue Ninjas.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I know you mentioned that your not necessarily disdain, but your dislike for characters that maybe aren't based on toys. I'm actually, at this point in time, and again, I don't want to, I say this every time, but I'm going to repeat it. I say that I'm not going to repeat it, but my knowledge of these issues is a bit hazy, even though I've read them before, and I'll probably say that again next time. But I'm actually okay with this Blue Ninja stuff that we've seen so far, even the reveal of the cyborg stuff. I'm actually, okay, this could be quite cool. So whether or not I'll change my mind later, but are you already off this bandwagon?
There's a tangible threat to G.I. Joe in the form of Cobra.
Yeah.
Cobra has not been sufficiently stamped out, and yet we're dealing with this new third faction.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
I guess they're inserted to kind of change the game because, like, we're at a stalemate. Homer can never conclusively, have a victor between G.I. Joe and Cobra, so he needs to introduce a new disposable third factor.
Yeah.
So I get its storyline function. That's fine, but it just points to the fact that, like, G.I. Joe continuity is so contrived now. Yeah. We have to reinvent the battle android troopers. I mean, like, Cobra got as advanced as this.
Yeah, that's what they are. Effectively, these are bats, aren't they, really?
Yeah, well, they're the... it was actually one of Trimpy's brainchilds from issue 119, where he had the kind of the lifelike bats that could be kind of inserted into society. That whole storyline actually just concluded in one issue. But here we've gone back to the well of artificial intelligence being the enemy. And I'm like, man, I just want to see more G.I. Joe versus Cobra.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Another thing I want to pick your brains about, which we touched on last episode, is we see Darklon on the USS Flag with his mask, sans uniform, and he's kind of flesh skin coloured. Now, you posited last episode that maybe that green was his skin. Now, maybe that was the intention for the toy. Maybe this is just a comic adaptation of the character.
Chief, unfortunately, you'll never know when I'm speaking fact or generally held fact or speaking out of my ass. And I think it might have been a case of the latter. So you're in poker terminology, you're starting to learn my tells.
Right.
But look, I just was positing that maybe somewhere along the line in the creation of this character that the design was supposed to be a reptilian snake man a la Cobra La.
Yeah, I think there is some merit in that, though. Looking back, I had a good long look at that design, and I think you're probably on the right lines. And when they're designing these toys, they don't need to necessarily create a massive convoluted backstory. It's just like, this is cool, let's just bodge all these bits together and look what we've come up with. This can be this guy and
Destro's distant cousin. Hey,
that's it. Yeah. And then obviously it's up to Larry Hama and the writers and artists on the comic to kind of decide what they want to do with that character and flesh out the backstory. So I
love the fact that his mask does not come off. In fact, I read all those lines that he has with Bane's voice.
Yeah, brilliant.
Somebody
Amazing.
get me a tongue depressor to stop me from gagging.
Yeah, that is the way. That's the one. Great stuff. I had another question for you here, actually, and that is...
Shoot.
They mention here about someone spotted 3 different HISS tanks, and later on in the next issue, they actually say they've got 5 different HISS tank versions. Is that a thing? Are there 5 different HISS tank versions?
So many, Chief.
All right,
Gee
okay.
whiz.
Wow, I'm behind the curve here.
Oof. Brother. 3D Joes. No, in fact, 3D Joes can't save your ass in this situation.
Okay.
Unfortunately, you'd have to go even deeper.
Right.
Yojo.com
Yes.
will have the full list of his tanks for your perusal.
Okay,
At
cool.
least the officially released ones.
Are you happy with the depiction of the HISS tanks here?
Baby, you know it.
Okay,
These
good.
are perfectly on model. Yeah. I come back to the fact that I think we're dealing with artists who were G.I. Joe hardcore. Like,
Right.
these images, these vehicles, these designs are so steeped in their own upbringing that they are very, very faithful to them. They acknowledge the fact that, like, don't reinvent the wheel. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Like, you don't mess with a perfect design.
Yeah.
These are geometric perfection.
Brilliant.
I mean, it feels almost like they 3D scanned the HISS tank and then kind of, just basically traced over whichever angle they decided to pick.
Yeah. Well, these HISS tanks are in a bit of trouble early on because I like the fact that here that so the Cobras, which is a mixture of kind of Pythonized Cobras in these HISS tanks with the True Seal Abysmia army, they've come into the Emirate of Benzheen, and the Joes, I like it, are using almost guerrilla tactics. So they're kind of setting bonfires to set off the heat source radars. They're setting up market stalls. They're kind of hiding around corners and really using like I said, these guerrilla tactics, because they are almost like reminiscent of round issue 100, where Mutt and Spirit are with that youth gang, and they're kind of the Millville invasion. They're using all these tactics with a smaller force against this bigger army, and I really like the way it all played out.
What did they drop on a Cobra bug back in that issue?
It's a safe. I think
brutal, man.
it's like a big iron cast safe.
Oh, the bug didn't stand a chance. That thing's meant for doing Lotus Esprit action under the waves.
That's it. That should be fighting Bond.
Damn.
But yeah, they even mentioned Raiders of the Lost Ark here as well, doesn't he? Steeler swings the tank.
I knew you'd love that.
Yeah. And he says something like, let's hope they're not into movies or something. Let's hope the True Seal Abysmian tank drivers aren't movie fans. But yeah, Gallant's drawing the heck out of this issue, and the action is just
So
pretty
good.
much non-stop. Really good stuff.
And once again, just seeing the vehicles represented so faithfully. It's a double-edged sword for me because I'm like, yes, the HISS tanks are beautiful, but we don't have the G.I. Joe counter to that. We're stuck with a real-world tank, which I suppose will thrill some readers, but not this guy. I want to get my Mauler out and play this, man.
That's it. Yeah, I like that bit where he does a triple play as well. He's lined up 3 HISS tanks, and he's got some crazy. What's the armor he's using there? The shell he's using.
The weapon, I
Yeah.
think it's called...
Load me a
you get it
depleted uranium super penetrator. Love it.
Blam!
Yeah.
Doom, doom, doom! Triple play!
I'll tell you another thing I spotted here is that we cut across. It's a very brief scene. It's one page of Castle Destro, and Destro and Baroness are having dinner, and they're literally at opposite ends of the table, kind of like in Batman.
Stromberg's.
Either Stromberg's table, good shout, or in Burton's '89 Batman, where Bruce Wayne is having dinner right at the end of the table from Vicky Vale, and then they end up moving.
They can't hear what each other's saying.
Exactly, yeah.
I guess Destro and Baroness are really good at projecting at this point.
Yeah. And he kind of mentions, it seems Cobra Commander has suffered a death in the family, Billy, and she's really cold about it all. She's like, is that so? And Destro reels off a load of speech, and she's like, he started out as an ungrateful child and ended up as an insufferable prodigal. He was nothing. So
Do you think he put it in?
maybe.
You reckon?
No.
There's even the slightest possibility. Destro would have been the one to off him if that was the case.
That's
I'd
it.
say, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I've always deemed that, like, before we really get to know Baroness in the comic books, there's an overtone that, like, her greatest weapon was sex appeal.
Yes.
She could wrap all these powerful men around her finger. And I guess maybe Billy was on the hit list? But it was all
possibly.
brainwave scanner induced, wasn't it?
It was all brainwave scanner induced, but I mean, she's being a bit cold there. Listen, I've just sent you a message.
Evasive, I'd say.
Yeah, I've just sent you a message, and this is a page I own, and this is the page of this comic where we see Storm Shadow and Snake Eyes dropping in. They're in Hackensack, New Jersey, and they're at Revanche Robotics Corp, and they're dropping in to kind of have a snoop around. And yeah, I own this page, and this
Buddy,
is...
if there's a page to own, this is the page.
It's a nice one. It's a Gary Erskine's
beautiful.
inks over S.L. Gallant's Blue Lines. Bought this off Gary at a comic show, and I think me and both Peter and Mark Seddon, we bought a bunch of pages. I think Mark has posted some up on the Talking Joe Facebook page, so have a look at those when you get the chance. But
Very much a V2 Snake Eyes.
Yeah.
What version Storm Shadow would you say that is?
Well, I don't know. It's kind of it's a weird one, isn't it? Because he's kind of got a top which has no sleeves or sides to it, and it's not a one-piece hood. It's almost like a face mask with a hood over the top. Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's a good hybrid of V1 and V2.
Yeah,
It doesn't have the urban camo splotches, but like I do like the way the hood is presented. Obviously, there's no Cobra symbol. Yeah, dude, this is... Man, if they made a toy of this, I'd buy the hell out of it.
Yeah. And they find this kind of prototype, and, you get the intruder alert, and the prototypes come to life on the table. And I don't think we get a conclusion to that in this issue, do we? I'm just flicking through. No, we don't. So we're going to have to wait till issue 175 to find out what happens with Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow.
I don't really mind, though. We get back to some tank action, don't we?
Yeah, we get tank action. Like we said, the Russians and the Joes have teamed up. They're kind of laying the smack down, and then as quickly as it started, it all kind of finishes. All the Trucia Bismuth guys bug out, so to speak, because they've kind of cut a deal. There's been a revolt in Benzheen, and they've cut a deal with the new leader. So they're happy. Everyone's bugged out.
I've got a question for you, Chief.
Go on.
The last time we saw Destro, he was pulling a gun on Cobra Commander.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
He's either getting guns pulled on him or katanas in the night pulled
That's
on
it.
him. It's a bit tedious. Is that maybe a Larry Hamaism? Perhaps. But it seemed like Destro was in a rush to go somewhere. He and Baroness jumped in a fire bat and off they went.
That's right.
After learning that that G.I. Joe was closing in on Darklon.
Yes.
But it seems that they were in a rush to get back home. Because the next time we see them, they're back in Castle Destro without any real sense of urgency. I don't know.
Yeah,
What's
I
the
don't know.
explanation
I don't know if Larry's just forgotten about what he wrote, a couple of issues previous or not. But
Chief, it is our sworn duty to defend Mr. Larry Hama.
okay,
the
so
death.
I think
Prize time.
No prize time. Yeah, I think Destro had kind of mulled it all over, and he'd realised that Darklon had been rescued by the Joes, so he kind of knew he was in good enough hands and was safe being with the Joes rather than being with Cobra Commander. So he kind of put him at ease a little bit, and he went back to Castle Destro to mull over proceedings.
I'll buy that for $1.
That's it. No prize in the post for Chief. I'll send myself something. We do see Cobra Commander in the back of his limo with... He's always got a Televiper around him, hasn't he? He's there with Mindbender, and the Televiper now has upgraded from his mobile phone to an iPad.
I'll never get used to that, man. A Televiper.
Yeah.
You could not get a more 80s trope if you tried. And he's walking around with smartphones and tablets.
That's it.
It's a bit jarring, I'm not going to lie.
And now Cobra Commander wants to get the lowdown himself on these blue ninjas. So he thinks he's got a lead-in of a guy with some tech or a girl with some tech, and it's Dr. Eleanor Shen, but she has gone missing, so he wants her tracked down. And then we do get a scene of... This is kind of the cover that Trimpe or Larry Hama had done the layouts for, and Trimpe had done of the Crimson Guard carrying the coffin with Cobra Commander at the front. And yeah, he is kind of, Mindbender says, have you prepared a eulogy? And he says, there will be no eulogy. The prodigal's return, he can't even say his son. He says, the prodigal's return was not of his own accord. What we shall have is a respectful silence and rueful ruminations on my part. So he is kind of, a bit gutted, and
Ooh, I got goose pimples again, man. Damn, son.
Yeah. What
I do like
what's-
seeing Cobra Commander being more proactive, though. Just to jump back to the fact that he says, you know, we're gonna kill these whoever these blue ninjas are first. You know, we're gonna get the drop on G.I. Joe because we're not weighed down by the same kind of, I suppose, ethical limitations that
That's right.
a sort of government-sanctioned armed force is going to be hit with. Like, we're going to track them down and do some damage, man. So it's nice having the commander finally taking control and doing some smack talk and just being more assertive. Yeah. That's the Cobra Commander I need. Let's have more of that, please.
Yeah, good shout. What's your thinking overall in these couple of issues? If we're going to yo-joage it?
Definitely gonna give it a higher ranking than the last arc, because I love me some action, and this was full of it. The art is incredible. We get plot development, but not too much. It's really, it feels to me like special missions, in a sense, except without a clear, definable kind of parable or like lesson. Because I always found like special missions, there was always something to be gained other than just the narrative itself. So it's not quite on par with the special missions issue, but it's definitely in the 7 category.
Yep. I'm in the same boat as you. I really enjoyed these two.
Good
I'm
man.
probably going to give this a high 7. Cracking stuff. Lots of varied stories going on. Good cliffhangers, edge of the seat stuff. Great art. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. High 7 from the Chief. We have talked briefly about some toys during that comic talk, but now I want dedicated toy talk, and there's only one man I go to in that scenario, and that is S-Jubbs 7.
Steve talks about toys, ho ho. Steve talks about G.I. Joe. He talks about all the toys from the comic book and the animated show. Steve talks about toys. Steve talks about toys. Steve talks about toys. Steve talks about toys.
Listen, buddy, this is probably the prime opportunity to talk about the Cobra High Speed Sentry,
Ooh.
or HISS.
Yeah.
And I speak specifically about the 1983 release, or American release, but the HISS has gone through so many versions, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention at least some of the highlights. I'll see if we have time for them. But if we talk specifically about version 1, man, is this a tank, or is this a sports car on tank treads? Either way, it's a thing of beauty. It is a total icon. And if we want to look at some of the write-ups about it, and there've been quite a few, but the one that I'm going to fall on for reference purposes comes from a Devil's Due publication.
Right.
This was in their battle files. And it says, Cobra HISS, high-speed sentry, weight 9.75 tons, speed fully loaded, 75 miles per hour on the road, 60 miles per hour cross-country. Range, fully loaded, 275 miles. Armament, dorsal-mounted twin 30mm automatic cannons with 2,000 rounds of ammunition each. The write-up goes as follows. One of the earliest contributions from the Destro-owned Mars organization to Cobra Command, the Cobra HISS is an inexpensive and effective specialty tank. Utilizing modular technology which allows damaged parts to be quickly removed and repaired, this fast attack vehicle is a feared part of the Cobra arsenal. Synonymous with the terrorist organization, Cobra HISS tanks are operable in a pinch by nearly every troop and are a highly adaptable force to be reckoned with.
Yeah,
man, these things are probably the closest thing to a Cobra icon we get, and their inclusion in the comic books started as early as issue 11, the Pipeline Ploy.
Yes. Now,
They went through some
these,
interesting
is there
versions.
I'm not big up on military history. Is there something that this would have been modelled on from a real-life vehicle, or is it completely its own thing?
It's completely its own thing, I'd say, and it's better for it. You know, you are not going to ever be in danger of mistaking this for any real-world tank.
Correct.
Okay, it is laughable in some respects because it's got a glass canopy up front. It rides really high, which is a major no-no with tanks. I mean, typically you want to be low. The lower profile your tank is, the more it can use natural cover.
Yes.
And the gunner is exposed. But let me tell you, you look at this thing once and it's unforgettable. It is in a class of its own. It is a thing of beauty, and it definitely does live up to its acronym. 75 miles per hour road speed. That's like a highway speed. That's like 120 kilometers per
right.
hour. That's proper fast, man. In fact, in one of its early appearances, I'm going to dial the clocks back, and forgive me if this gives you more homework, but in issue number 16, Night Attack,
Yes.
we've got a fantastic panel where Clutch and Hawk are in the Vamp, pursuing a escaping Hiss tank, and of it, Clutch says, "Yow, that thing pretty near popped a wheelie. Sure would like to see what's revving under her hood."
Yeah, right.
The Hiss tank is blisteringly fast. And also, its compact size means that, as demonstrated in those early issues, it can be ferried around America in the back of an Arbco Brothers circus truck.
Sure can.
And deployment in a pinch, it very much fit Cobra's modus operandi back then. You know, they needed something extremely fast, extremely lethal, potent, something that would really be a threat to any kind of infantry force. And the Hiss is that. I'd even go as far as to say that in the right numbers, the Hiss should be able to best any main battle tank. It's only because of the Joe's kind of guile in these issues that we looked at that they're able to take out as many Hisses as they did. But if the Hiss drivers had more of a strategy, I'd say the Joes and October Guard or Russians wouldn't have stood a chance, man.
Yeah.
These things are lethal.
Yeah, these are quality, man. Now, has the driver kind of maintained the same-ish look through all the Hiss tanks, or has he gone through any kind of radical redesigns?
I'd say the driver fell into obscurity for a long time before being revived by the 25th anniversary. They kind of did a single-carded version of him, I guess, to kind of complement the Hiss tanks. I mean, there was a period where Hiss tanks were being sold with just generic Cobra troopers in them. But the Hiss tank driver is definitely worth taking a look at a little bit more closely, because there's a few oddities to their file card which I'm going to draw your attention to. Cobra Hiss driver, codename The Enemy, file name unknown, primary military specialty Hiss driver, secondary military specialty mechanical and electrical systems, birthplace various countries, grade 05. An 05 is sort of the fifth rung in the sort of officers' pay grades.
Okay.
And that would make him a lieutenant colonel, which is an extremely high rank for a tank driver,
Right.
let me just add. But, I mean, that might be an erroneous detail. Let's rather just ignore that for now. Possible error. Who knows?
Okay.
But the stuff I'd really like to get my teeth into is in the next paragraph. Cobra Hiss drivers are selected from the very best and most evil of Cobra Command's thousands of yearly recruits. Each is chosen for his physical strength and total dedication to evil.
Double
For a
evil.
Bond villain. Oh, evil. These guys are just... they're Machiavellian. They're twirling the moustaches, aren't they?
That's it.
Hiss drivers are graduates of Cobra Battle School, Advanced Weapons System Training. They're qualified experts in the Hiss vehicle and Fang helicopter. And they have knowledge of all NATO and G.I. Joe weapons. So these guys are not only Hiss tank drivers, but they are the intended occupants of the eponymous Fang helicopter.
Yeah, that's quality. They kind of sound a bit like Chris covered on a previous episode, the Ice Vipers. And those guys, they were also eels
Specialized, yeah.
and multiple kind of disciplines. So
Yeah, it's like you take the eel training, you
Yeah.
add snow serpent training on top of that,
Yeah.
and then you add, I think, techno viper training
That's
because
it.
they're vehicle and equipment specialists. So,
yeah, so these
they're
guys,
extremely cross-trained.
these Hiss tank drivers also seem to be pretty much loaded up on abilities.
I suppose they had to be because if you dial the clocks back to 1983, you had the command staff in Cobra Commander, Destro, the weapons supplier, and Major Blood as the kind of the field commander. Then you had the Cobra officers, which filled out all the other functionaries, and then the rank and file troopers. So anything mechanized, these guys would have to, the Cobra Hiss driver would have to kind of be a shoe-in for. So, you had a helicopter with no occupant, the Hiss driver was your guy. And they even went as far as to use him in issues of the comic book. If we dial the clocks way back once again to issue number 37, Twin Brothers,
Man,
which is the introduction.
This guy's done his homework.
Oh yeah, the introduction of the Crimson Guard commanders.
Yep.
We see that they're used in place of the Crimson Guard. it's very clear from the context that we
you're
should
right.
be looking at Crimson
You're right, I
Guardsmen.
remember that.
Yeah, man, but the toy that was brought out of the toy box by the artist was in fact his tank drivers. So that's erroneous and a little bit of comic book trivia. But I guess, hey,
Frank
when
Springer,
you're telling
I think was on the art there.
when you're telling Mr. Springer, like, and he's asking, which one is the Crimson Guard? Oh, it's the red one. So out comes the Hiss Driver. The Hiss Drivers were the first Cobras to wear red uniforms. So easy mistake to make. But the specialization, at least in the sort of the helicopter cockpits that I refer to, happen in Darkness, issue number 30.
Yeah, that's a good one.
On the assaults, it is the final assault on McGuire Air Force Base in New Jersey. And we have very visibly the Cobra Hiss Driver in the seat of the Fang helicopters, which is something I wish they did more often. It's so nice to see that kind of cross-specialization, and is very gratifying. Even if you're just assembling your toys, it's a great action figure to put in the cockpit because the color contrast is so vibrant. Why put a dark action figure in the cockpit of a dark helicopter or dark tank when you've got this guy with this bright uniform? Yeah, man, it really, really is a nice aesthetic choice.
Yeah, good stuff, good stuff.
Do you have any memories associated with the Hiss tank, Chief?
I never had the Hiss tank, and the only other person that I collected / played Joe with was Ben, and he never had the Hiss tank, so I've never actually seen a toy in the flesh of the Hiss tank, no.
It's understandable, man. You know that the UK kind of missed it. Its release as a Hiss tank was missed. In the Action Force era, you would have gotten it as the Hyena, but that's way back. That's like 1984, 85. It was colored red initially, and it came with red Jackal. Yeah, a recolored Destro.
Yeah.
And then it was recolored black and came with the more stock standard Hiss Driver, but also like way before our time, man.
Wait a minute, I'm just pulling out, I've got in front of me some...
Toys? You got some toys, Chief?
No, not toys, card backs. And I think, is it on one of these? Yeah, wait a minute, is that? No. I thought I had it on the back of a carded toy. I'll send you some images, I'll post these up online. This has got, I've got some old ones here, so I've got a Red Shadow card back. But on the
For Red Jackal?
On the back it's got the enemy, but let me just send you a picture quickly. It's got the enemy, Baron Ironblood, Black Major, Mouton, Red Shadow, Laser Exterminator and Red Laser, Shadow Track and Red Vulture. But no,
nice.
I don't know if these ever appeared on...
So was that clipped from a card back?
Yeah, I'm just sending you the card back I've got now, yeah. So this is...
Ah, fantastic.
I've got Red Shadow, Black Major, Mouton. These are all the figures I had as a kid. I've still got the original.
Funny, they don't have the Hyena in that lineup.
Doesn't have the Hyena.
I guess
no.
they kind of... Yeah, they kept it to a reasonably small sampling because the image is... It's quite tight. I mean, there's a lot of toy on display.
Yeah.
But I think the Hyena would have been released in that same wave.
Yes. How did you get hold of it then, when you were growing up?
Buddy, if you guys didn't get it, we didn't get it either. I first became acquainted with the Hiss tank mold through one of its sort of later iterations. Not a word of a lie.
Yeah.
This is the name.
Go on.
Wait for it. The Septic Tank.
There you go.
Good lord. It was released as part of the Eco Warriors subset.
Okay.
It was kind of an ecological disaster vehicle. Colored in bright orange and with a very different kind of turret that squirted water. It nevertheless used the main vehicle hull of the Hiss tank. When I discovered first that this thing had such a long lineage, it was in an advertisement for... in one of the issues of Tales of G.I. Joe. It was a reprinting of issue number 15, Red Eye to Miami, and it was a mail-away offer for the Cobra Hiss tank, because these things, even though they stopped production of them, or they stopped retail in the main line, they were still sold via mail-away. You'd kind of send in your flag points or your action points, and you'd be able to get a Hiss tank in the mail. And I was like, whoa! So this thing, the Septic Tank that I have in my collection, it used to be dressed up in black and was called the Hiss tank. Well, I immediately got a permanent marker and I colored in my orange septic tank to resemble this kick-ass his tank. I found a custom sort of turret of some generic toy, and like I just basically blue tacked that to the turret of the septic tank.
Strong.
And made a his tank out of it. Yeah, man.
That's it.
So I definitely had a love affair with the his tank mold. Eventually, I picked up my very own original his tank on South African soil. I found it in the dusty back room of a comic book store in Johannesburg.
Right.
Yeah, man.
Nice.
And I made it mine.
Nice.
Bought the whole box. There were a bunch of stuff there from various points of origin. They were like Action Force claw rocket gliders, and a Japanese Rattler, complete with the Takara blueprints. I mean, this might be sailing plainly over your head, but hopefully some of the listeners know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But it was a hot mess of different countries of origin. But
I've just found this on the shelf. I just sent you a picture.
Chief, you are pulling out the gems, buddy. Yeah. Oh my goodness, the Action Force. What would they call it? The helicopter?
It was it was called SAS Hawk and Blades. Blades was the pilot,
Blades.
And it was Hawk. Yeah,
repainted tripwire.
That's it, repainted tripwire. Yeah, it was. Yeah.
He looks good as a pilot. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It's quite possibly Blades in the cockpit of the Skyhawk on the cover of issue. What was it? 172.
Okay, right, yeah. Oh, yeah. We posited that, didn't we? We said, was it a nice Commando version? Yeah, of Snake Eyes. But good shout.
Could be Blades.
I hope it is. I'm saying it is. Listen, man, I knew not a lot about the His Tank from a toy point of view because, like you said, we didn't really get it much over here. So that is all good stuff as always. There'll be more toy talk next week. S-Jubbs pulling out the gems to educate the chief. I'm sure most people listening are aware of most of this stuff anyway, but it's brilliant. Love it. Listen, man, I want to now confuse some people, if it's possible, so it's time for some Commonwealth colloquialisms, aka over-egging the pudding.
We got a pudding. We got a pudding. We're gonna over-egg that pudding. Ain't got no criticisms. We got some Commonwealth colloquialisms.
So, what have you got for me this week, my friend?
Well, since I am sitting in Australia at the moment, mate, I figured I'd switch it up and give you an Aussie slang and a South African slang today. If I was to say the word shocker, what do you think I'd be referring to?
Shocker. So, in the UK, I actually use that quite a bit, and you hear it in sporting parlance over here. So I'm going to take a punt that it is the same. I don't know if that's one in itself, punt, but I'm going to take a punt that it is the same in Australia as it is over here. So if you've had a shocker, it means you've had a mare, i.e. you've had a nightmare, i.e. it's absolutely gone wrong for you in a fashion. I
would accept, but I also know it to be Aussie slang for shock absorbers.
Ah, did not know that.
Shockers. Not to be confused with stingers. And what do you imagine a stinger is?
So the only reference I have for a stinger is from watching American football, where someone gets kind of a jolt to the leg and they've taken a stinger to the leg. So as in a sharp blow.
Yeah, well, I know it, in these parts at least, northern Queensland, to be in reference to jellyfish.
Ah, okay, makes sense.
Careful of the stingers, mate. Marine stingers, they're called jellyfish stingers.
Shockers and stingers.
Shockers and stingers, not the same thing at all.
No. So I was 0 for 2 there, really. Right, my one
Let's try and even you up with a South African, then. If I was to say, what a chop. What do you imagine chop would mean?
What a chop. So, sorry, I'm eating some of these plantain crisps.
Do it, buddy. I want to eat some eggnog cookies. We'll have a crunch off.
What a chop. I'm saying it's not a Roger Moore Bond chop. What I'm saying is I'm going to, again, take another guess that it is some kind of derivative, or one is a derivative of the other, of a UK thing where someone would say chopper, and you'd say, this guy's a right chopper, meaning this guy's a right idiot. So I'm going to say
all
idiot.
All right, you're 1 out of 3, buddy. It is absolutely that.
Okay, good.
You would oftentimes use it to criticize someone else, but sometimes you kind of use it reflectively. Like if you did something idiotic, you're like, oh, what a chop.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I like that one. I use chopper quite a lot at work, and no one else uses it, so most people don't know what I'm talking about because I'm about 20 years older than everyone else at work. So there you go. Listen, my one comes from a comic that I read this morning, and that comic is 2000 AD, the Galaxy's greatest comic. And it's from a strip called Sinister Dexter, written by Dan Abnett, who wrote a lot of Guardians of the Galaxy comics for Marvel, amongst pretty much writing for every publisher and every major comic book character. But he started a lot of his early work for 2000 AD with this strip called Sinister Dexter, which he still writes today, and it's about two hitmen in the fictional city of Download. And in this issue in this strip I read, it was just like an 8-page strip, they had visited London, and there was a lot of Cockney rhyming slang and London-based jargon in the issue, and one of the characters said was, "Oi, that's Kushti, mate." So Kushti is Kushti is the British colloquialism.
Would that be BS?
Nope, it's almost the complete opposite. Kushti means it's all right, it's A-OK. And it was also a word used by Del Boy in Only Fools and Horses, which is I don't know if you've got it over there, but it's over here it's a very famous and well-loved UK comedy series.
Nice.
So there you go.
No, that sailed plainly over my head, man. But
Kushti. So if something's
now
good,
I know.
if something's good or it's all right, it's Kushti. So
fantastic, man. I always love it when it comes out of left field, when the colloquialism, I have no idea. Because, I mean, I've spent a fair bit of time visiting the UK, so I do know a handful, but, man, Kushti.
Okay.
Dog and bone, baby.
We're going to close out this show. Listen, we have jam-packed audio delights into the listeners' ears this week, but we're not done yet because we've got another segment, and it goes like this.
Listeners ask us a question. Listeners ask us a question. What do they ask? What do we say when listeners ask us a question?
Jesus, I didn't know what I was saying there. Right, the first one came in from our man Phil from Canada. Always good to hear from Phil. And he said, question for the show. You are joining the Cobra organization. When picking out your uniform, you are given the following choice. You must choose one of the following. An eye patch and moustache or beryllium steel mask. And I will go first. I am going to pick an eye patch and moustache because I think it's a bit more flair. There's a bit more flourish to it. You can kind of, prance about a bit better than once you've got a steel mask on. Okay, good for headbutting and deflecting bullets and stuff. But other than that, not for me.
Mate, at the cost of being boring, I'm going to go with eye patch and tash as well and just say that I grow one hell of a moustache.
I've seen it and it is very impressive.
Yes, indeed. In fact, I would wager there is no man that grows a better moustache than I. So I will out-moustachio you, brother.
Yeah, you'll whoop me hands down on that. But there you go. We also had some other ones here. So Brad on the Facebook said, what was the first G.I. Joe comic book you ever read? His was G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero 27. What was your first one, sir?
My brother bought it for me after a rugby match. I was about 7 years old and planted it in my hand on the car ride home. It was issue number 130.
Okay, good shout.
It's an Andrew Wildman.
Yes.
So it should rank pretty highly. And it was the first part of a pit invasion.
Yep.
And as these things go, the first part is always gold. It tends to fall flat pretty quickly after that. But that first issue kind of existed in a bubble for me. I didn't get the second part. So I was always continuing the adventure in my playtime.
Yep.
And it was a very, very good starting point, jump off point.
For me, I will say I definitely bought Action Force issue 1. I know that's not G.I. Joe, but I'm going to lead in. So Action Force issue 1 in 1987. I cannot remember if I had read any Battle Action Force prior to that, which had characters from G.I. Joe in it, but wasn't specifically G.I. Joe. However, off the back of starting to collect Action Force, which had reprints of the G.I. Joe material, I then put in a big back issue order to East Coast Comics I remember my dad had to write a banker's draft or obtain a banker's draft from Lloyd's Bank to send this thing over to East Coast Comics. They sent me back a big box, and I think it would have been something around. I think I started collecting the issues from the reprints, which were around issues 21 onwards. So I'm going to say it was maybe something around issue 21 was probably one of the first ones I read.
Incidentally, I got my first comic book signed by Mr. Larry Harmer at the 2018 final JoeCon in Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Wicked.
Yeah, man. Good times.
Okay,
good times.
Rock has asked us, what's your favourite story arc from G.I. Joe? Mine is issues 44 to 50, the Ripcord Zartan story and the Cobra Island invasion, and the Battle of Springfield. What about yourself? What's your favourite arc, would you say?
Oof, I'd say issues 12 till 15.
Nice.
Which deals with the introduction of the Sierra Gordo field of conflict. It has Quinn action, it's got Dr. Venom action. It kind of concludes with the three of them escaping Sierra Gordo in a vintage Avro Lancaster. I don't know, man. Something about this just... I think I had most of these issues growing up, and so they really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Close second would be the first two-parter, which was the Afghanistan issues.
Yeah.
Issues number 6 and 7.
Oh, yes, where they
To
team
fail
up with
is
the
to
October
conquer,
Guard.
to succeed is to die.
Yeah, that's got a
Yes,
quality
yes,
cover
yes.
of Stalker back-to-back with Colonel Breakov, hasn't it?
2 quality covers, man.
Yeah.
The reflected G.I. Joe and October Guard in Cobra Commander's helmet is also pretty cool.
I'm just looking up my spreadsheet of every Joe story ever, and I actually have as my number one listed is issues 45 to 48, the Cobra Island shenanigans, I've called it.
Makes sense,
Larry
man.
Harmer,
Yeah,
Rod
yeah.
Wiggum, that's all the good stuff. And then I think the second favourite is Shakedown, but that's a single issue. My next actual extended arc is issues 25 to 27, the introduction of Zartan and the Snake Eyes, the origin. So there you go.
Springer Art, which you're a fan of.
I do quite like the Springer Art, yeah. What's our next question up here? We have got Peter has said, who is your favourite G.I. Joe artist?
Trimpy. First impressions last, man.
That's it. He drew the bulk of those special missions. He drew a lot of the initial first issues as well, obviously. So, yeah, a guy's got
And
style.
sometimes when he had the writing chores, he also really, really brought some memorable stories.
Yeah.
Codename Sea Strike, the first time the Joes went to space.
Yeah.
And issue 119, where the Joes, with the sort of the ninja team, Scarlet, Snake Eyes, and Storm Shadow invade the Cobra Consulate building. Very, very memorable for this particular Joe fan.
Yep. I'm going with Rod Wiggum as my favourite. I think, I don't know, he just kind of tied everything together. It was a clean, crisp style. Made every character
It was also the sweet
distinctive and
spot,
unique. So, another question from Peter. He wants more Johannesburg G.I. Joe questions. So he said, did you get the cartoon? And relating to the figures, how soon after they were released did you get them? And were there any you didn't get that you really wanted?
Wow. Okay, so first to address the cartoon. We did get the cartoon, but I was a victim of perhaps being born 10 years too late, because the cartoon kind of preceded my existence. Yep. And also it was on a paid channel, sort of subscription channel that my family didn't have, so we didn't even have any episodes on tape. I'd say my first brushing with G.I. Joe animated would be the movie, the 1987 G.I. Joe the movie, which I think I must have rented out from the VHS rentals until they eventually retired the tape, because it was so worn. I loved that film growing up. Talking about the toys, I'd say we were 6 months to a year behind the UK releases. So the way things were released in the UK, the kind of the holes in the waves that the UK observed. So we didn't get many of the kind of the 87 Joes. We didn't get Sneak Peek or Outback, at least in the original form.
Right.
We didn't get Dress Blues, Gung Ho, or Jinx, or Psych Out. Instead, some of those figures found their way into Tiger Force redecos, Well, we got those. So while the Americans really covered the European Tiger Force, we actually had them released, in the supermarkets.
Right.
They were a dime a dozen. I'd say that's probably the coolest kind of side effect of being in a former British colony. But we definitely were getting the scraps from the table. So we got the more basic vehicles and perhaps the ones that didn't sell as well.
But,
I think I touched on it last week, like the Darklon Evader, the Fang 2, the Pulverizer. We got in abundance. We didn't get high-ticket items like the Rolling Thunder, for instance.
But were you
stuff
aware
that you would
at
have
that
expected.
stage with kind of a lack of internet? Were you aware of what was available?
Buddy, they say your life flashes before your eyes before you die. I think my flash will be a carbon copy of the 1990 and 1991 G.I. Joe leaflet.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
The promotional pamphlet that you would get in vehicle boxes, because man, I poured over that stuff so much.
Which one's
Just
the
teasing
1990
myself.
one? I'm pulling out a couple of leaflets out of my bag right now.
Okay, 1990 is the one that chronicles the switch over from the Action Force to G.I. Joe, the Action Force.
Okay.
It has vehicle blueprints on the one side, and then on the other side it's got vehicles like the Rolling Thunder, the Demon, the Swamp Masher, the Imp. It has the Tiger Force releases. I saw the Tiger Force Tiger Fly, and I was like, this is incredible. This looks at odds with everything else I've ever seen, because it looks like a real-world helicopter.
Right.
It was photographed extremely well, and by that stage, G.I. Joe designs were pretty off the wall. So to see something that looks like the AH-1 Huey Cobra in plastic form, it felt like a completely different toy line.
Yeah.
It was... Yeah, man, it was a tease, I should say. In a pre-internet age, these images were like something you examined under a microscope.
Yeah, that's good stuff. What we got up next? Bart is saying, what are our opinions on the brainwave scanner?
You are first, Chief. I've spoken enough.
Well, I know that Chris was not a fan of the brainwave scanner, just because, kind of similar to what Bart is echoing in the rest of his question here, he's saying it's overused and it's often a scapegoat, and you can use it to blame the scanner for things that are happening. But I think I'm okay with its usage. Now, again, I don't know if that's going to change if it starts getting used even more than it has been, but there has been recently, almost every issue has had some brainwave scanner appearance or plot point tying to it, but I'm actually okay with it at this moment in time.
Feels to me like we came in on the kind of the saturation point. So you and Chris were dealing with the brainwave scanner being used way too much. I jumped on, I think, in issue 169, where Mindbender trashes it.
Yeah.
And I think in a very literal sense, that's Larry saying, okay, guys, I get it. This is overplayed. Let me get rid of it for now and give you Blue Ninjas, rather.
Yeah.
But if you want to find sympathy for the devil, yes, it was overused, but the science of it was so fascinating. When it was presented in issue 10, it was a very coherently thought out way of reading thoughts. For anyone who needs a refresher, you basically play images in front of the subject and record how the brain interprets those images, like the signals that the brain produces when you, say, present an image of an apple or a car or a book.
Yep.
And once you've recorded those impulses, those brain waves, you can then create a vocabulary of that person's thoughts. So when you are just playing the raw data, the brain waves themselves, you can kind of translate that using this lexicon of images into very visible, thought reading. You're basically reading someone's mind through Google Translate.
Yeah.
Or a 1980s understanding of Google Translate.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. I mean, if Larry was the first author to really kind of synthesize those ideas, then it's a stroke of genius, and the guy does deserve some credit for that.
Yep. Agree. Matt has said, what is our favourite non-Joe related comic series? I think
I'm going to guess yours.
Yeah, go on.
I'm going to guess it.
It's fairly easy.
Judge Dredd.
Yeah, 2000 AD.
Oh, no, wait.
Or as, long-term listeners will know, I don't particularly like what year were you born in?
1984.
Yeah, exactly. You don't say 1984, do you? So you say you split it up 1984. So we shouldn't be saying 2000 AD. It should be 2000 or something like that. So 2000 AD, 2000 AD would be my favourite comic of all time. I think G.I. Joe. If I look,
Chief, you're definitely gonna have to die on that hill, man. Of the sort of naming convention to the dates. Oh, Chiefy, I don't know, buddy. I don't know. I know it's going to irk you to have these two schools of thought, but like just the way it rolls off your tongue has to dictate how you say it, man.
Maybe. Listen. G.I. Joe may well have some of my all-time favourite stories across all comics, but in terms of a single published series, nothing is ever going to beat 2000 AD for me. Been going weekly since 1977, still to this day. And that is a phenomenal achievement. It is still, to this day, my favourite. When it arrives, I've got a subscription. It arrives through the door weekly, and it still brings me joy when I get that comic. I have got honourable mentions. I've got I think about a 400-issue run of Fantastic Four, and I think a similar run of Daredevil, maybe a 300-issue run of Uncanny X-Men. So those stuff still hold a place in my heart. I think ultimately my favourite non-superhero, non-2000 AD work is maybe Scalped by Jason Aaron and R.M. Guerrera, which is set on a Native American Indian reservation. Yeah, I kind of like all genres. I'm going off superheroes a little bit now as I get a bit older, but I'm a comic book fanboy, so there you go. What about yourself?
Joe is so head and shoulders above every other comic book series for me. I honestly have not collected any other series, and that just speaks to my kind of toy fanaticism. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Watchmen made me feel things that no other comic book has to date. And to echo you, man, 2000 AD has kind of been something that I've drifted in and out of. But most recently, I picked up a collected edition of Rogue Trooper, and it's so good.
Yeah.
So good.
What, some of the early stuff, yeah?
Buddy, yeah, from the beginning right through to, I think, issue 200 or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
Man, just the designs, the artwork, it's on another level, man. Yeah. The specificity to technical detail is something that I really just pour over, man. Like, panel by panel, it's just... Each panel seems to be worthy of blowing up and hanging on your wall.
Yeah. I mean, I think you had the early first artist on that, I think it was Dave Gibbons, who was actually the artist on Watchmen.
Yeah, well, geez, there's a crossover right there, man. Yeah. I had no idea, but Dave
and
Gibbons,
then you get Cam Kennedy, who made Rogue Trooper his own and did some Dredd stuff as well, and did some Batman and Punisher stuff as well. But yeah, 2000 AD has had a slew of fantastic creators over the years and still does, but... Yeah,
why have we not seen a Rogue Trooper feature film?
Yeah, that's a good shout. He had a video game.
Love that. Something.
Yeah.
This blue-skinned, genetically modified trooper caught in this massive, epic struggle, but very much having his own agenda.
Yep.
And his 3 sidekicks, represented by fallen comrades, whose memories and minds are encoded in microchips that are loaded into his equipment. Bagman, Gunner, and Helm. Hey, these 3 voices warring in his head.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Good stuff.
Jeez.
Good
Voices from beyond the grave.
We got one more here. We got Matt, and he says, Matt Littleboy, the previous one was Matt Smith. Matt Littleboy says, would you like to see the original Real American Hero comic series made into a cartoon that is aimed at adults?
Hell and yes.
Okay.
The only addendum I'd add to that is I'd first want to see something akin to Special Missions, because I'm scared of weighty continuity, particularly when you come to a cartoon which has a very finite shelf life. I mean, production values being what they are, you can produce maybe 12 parts maximum, and then you're going to kind of need to reassess and come up with the rest of the money. But yeah, dude, absolutely. What a no-brainer. Thank you, Matt. That's a great question, and I'd have to say absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not sure So we're talking about the original Real American Hero run. Are we thinking? I'm not sure if you could start from number 1 and kind of chronicle all those issues in cartoon format. Do you think you could, or would you need to start where it started getting a bit more meaty and extended arcs, so around kind of the Pipeline Ploy kind of era? Or do you think it could work because you would need, potentially one-off standalone cartoon episodes? Do you think you could start from number 1 upwards?
Pipeline Ploy makes for a pretty good HOTS opening, but I don't know, the G.I. Joe historian in me says, why not just go the whole hog? Operation Lady Doomsday, bam, it's,
Would you
launch out of the gate with the original 13.
Do you think you've got voices in your head of how the characters sound, and do you think you'd be disappointed if they differed from either the previous cartoons or what you've got as how you hear them sounding? Do you think they could go wrong there, or you just want to see it regardless?
Oh man, we live in very different times. Like, voice casts have shrunk big time from the heyday of the 80s. A kid's cartoon in the 80s had dozens of voice actors, like great voice artists just coming in to read like 3 or 4 lines. Flash forward to the now, you're probably going to get about 5 or 6 voice artists that will have to spread their talents quite thin, cook up different voices, different ways of approaching characters to make them sound distinct. I'm sure they'd be professionals and they'd hold it down, but if you're asking if we'd see the kind of depth of virtuosity that the 80s tune had, it's doubtful, man. That is a very hard precedent to try and approach. Yeah.
Well,
unlikely.
There you go. Hope we answered your questions satisfactorily. If for some reason if for some reason I have left you out or missed out your question, apologies. Please get in contact and we'll read it out on the next episode. But wow, look, I'm looking at the clock.
Chief, that
1
was
hour
great,
45
buddy.
on the clock, buddy. We have we've been going at it.
Oof, I got a lot to say, man. Thanks for the questions. Those were fantastic.
Yeah, always great to get responses and interaction from the fans, so that makes it all worthwhile and worth doing. If you want to help us out a little bit further, you can do that. You can get onto iTunes or Stitcher. Rate and review us, give us 5 stars, tell them that Chief and S-Jubbs sent you. That will help us out. It's not for our egos or anything, it's just boosts us up the rankings and that funky iTunes algorithms. You can find us in all the usual places if you want to get in touch, and that is talking_Joe on Twitter, that is Talking Joe Comics on the Instagram, talkingjoecomics@gmail.com if you want to send an email, and Talking Joe, a G.I. Joe podcast on the Facebook. If the people want to check out your work, where can they do that, sir?
G.I. Joeberg on everything. Insta, Twitter, YouTube, Podbean. You can't miss.
Yeah, he's cranking out the yeoman's work there, so that's all good stuff. Please check it out. If you want to check out me, you can find me on Chiefy Two Shoes on Twitter. I don't really do much there, to be honest, so you won't find much. But you can also find me on The Outer Timers, which is the other podcast I do with former co-host Ben. We talk about movies, video games, etc. We're going to get old S-Jubbs on for a guest appearance at some point as well, so stay tuned for that. But well, it's time for my bed, man. The missus is going to get annoyed with me when I go down this loft hatch and make a load of noise and wake her up, so we're going to sign off.
Chief.
So with all that said and done, we will catch you down the road.
See you guys.
Bye.